Now, to this, the long wait for housing is almost over. For the victims of KwaZulu-Natal's deadly floods, the provincial government has now identified land to build new homes on. The April floods left thousands of people homeless. Meanwhile, Premier Sihle Zikalala is looking to turn around the state of local government in the province. At least 8 municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal are under administration currently. And Zikalala led the local government in Durban today, trying to address some of the major service delivery issues. So our senior reporters Sipamandla Gowe and Dasen Thathiah have been following those two strands of stories from that province, and they join us now. So Dasen, let's start with you, and a very good evening to you. Talk to me about the flood victims and their homes and what the plan is, because this has been a bone of contention for a few months now.
No, definitely, Sal. It's been an absolute crisis because after the floods, we knew that those victims had been confined to these community halls. Some of them had moved in with other relatives, but by and large, they had lost everything during that. And a large portion of them had come from informal settlements around Durban. So there was already an issue with housing in the city. The backlog is well known. The last time I spoke to the MEC for Human Settlements, he told me that that backlog was over 700,000, and that's 700,000 homes I'm talking about that needed to be built. So this problem existed already, and then it was exacerbated by what happened during those floods and with so many people losing their homes. So finally, a little bit of good news now with some of those sites being identified. These are sites where there will be temporary residential units that will be built on them. And the plan is that on those very sites, in the long term, there'll be more permanent structures that will be developed. We saw pictures of some of them. They look like flats. So you'd have several stories, or double story, for example, and you have multiple families that are living in those units. So we were promised that it would not be, as some people had anticipated, some metal structures or anything that resembles a shack. Instead, it's going to be proper housing, even the temporary units. But let's listen into what Sihle Zikalala had to say when he unpacked some of the figures and the numbers behind this project.
The total amount applied for was about 1.1 million. We also indicated to the Disaster Management Center that the medium to long-term relief is estimated at 17.8 billion. The total required for implementing municipal infrastructure repairs is estimated at 12.6 billion, whilst the sector department is estimated at 5.1 billion. In this regard, the total amount required for the post-disaster recovery in the whole province is estimated at 17.8 billion.
17.8 billion, that's a lot of money, but it puts a price tag on some of the damage caused from those April floods. So, Dasen, did you get time frames? You've said that they've identified sites of land, that it's going to be proper temporary sort of flats that people are going to be staying in. Any time frame on when they're going to be moved into those units? And what about the people who've been spending years on the housing waiting list? Do these flood victims jump the queue?
Well, let me put this into perspective, because that was one of the questions that I asked of the Human Settlements MEC, and I'll get to that in a second. But currently, there are 84 what they call mass care centers. That's where these flood victims are housed. So of those, 44 of them have been linked to what's called a land parcel. So effectively what this is these are plots of land, some of them within suburbs, for example, where it's been identified, mostly government owned, and that's where these houses, both the temporary and then the permanent structures, will be placed. So the logical question is, what happens to all of those other people that have been living in transit camps, for example, for all of these years? And the MEC's response to me was very simple. He says that this is a process that's happening parallel to that. So how it will be executed, I guess that's what we need to watch. But basically what he's saying is that this doesn't hinder any of the existing projects. But by virtue of people still being in transit camps for that long, I guess that gives an indication of how well or otherwise those other projects are going. So that's definitely one to watch. But one thing that was stressed was that this was an emergency and this needs to be attended to now. In his words, we can't wait until tomorrow. These people need to be rehomed as soon as possible.
And then some residents apparently don't want flood victims living nearby. You spoken to them?
I did. So initially, you would remember that in the rush of everything that happened post-flood, we saw reports of residents in some communities complaining about the possibility of people being relocated into these vacant plots of land. But in the conversations that we had with some of the residents today, for example, in Reservoir Hills, it seems that the issue was over the communication. So they felt that these messages or this message was not communicated to them about how it would be executed and how it would be done. They kind of envisioned that there would be an informal settlement that would pop up right next door to where they live. So what they're saying is that, look, if it's done right and if there is engagement and if we know what's happening, it's fine. I'll let you listen into an interview that I conducted with the residents there in Reservoir Hills today.
We want people to have decent housing, proper housing, not temporary housing. And when they started here, they never have proper engagement with us. First of all, our residents got excited when they saw the TLB coming here and they thought they were going to demolish the temple. But if you have proper engagement with us, things would have went smoother. My question is, we want people to live next to us, side by side. We live in Reservoir Hills for many years, and we got this check settlement. We got no problem with them. They are one of the best residents you can have around you. Yeah. Right. Now my question is, you want to put TRU, that's a temporary structure. How long that temporary structure is going to be on this land? What guarantees we got the permanent housing will come here? We got the mayor here, and he's prepared with the infrastructure that's coming in, water, sewer, and all works. At this moment in time, we got about 3 or 4 sewer lines are not functioning. They're all broken, and nobody is doing a damn thing about it.